Okay, welcome everybody. I'm very excited about the conversation that we're going to have today, comparing facilitation with consulting. The reason that I'm really excited to have this conversation is partially because of a problem that I have, which is when I tell people what I do, that I'm a facilitator, I help people get stuff done, I help people make decisions, work out a plan of how to move forward. One of the questions that I get really often is that like consulting? And I'm hoping that this conversation is the start of a series where I compare facilitation to other things that it gets confused with quite often. And there's lots of things that facilitation gets confused with. And in many ways, it's similar to other things, and in other ways, it's very distinct. And I think that as facilitators, the better we understand the edges and the gray areas of our craft, the better we're going to be at being facilitators. Because where we set boundaries, where we stretch out of our comfort zone, how we develop the skills that we need to truly serve groups will help us know when facilitation is truly the best path forward. And maybe when stepping into another role is helpful. So in today's video, we will be contrasting facilitation to consulting. And my guest, Lára Kristín Skúladóttir, and I will be sharing our personal take from our personal experience on the topic, as well as some of the things that we learned when we did some research on how other people view the difference. So we did a bit of preparation. We got very rich information from lots of smart people on LinkedIn that we will link down below in the description because there's lots of very wise people saying smart things. But we're going to try and keep it relatively contained and from our own perspective here. So let's get into it. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for having me on this call.
Excellent.
Great to be here.
Very happy to have you. And we've been talking about the topic of facilitation and consulting and facilitative consultancy for probably about a year now, which is why I really wanted you to be the person who came on and unpacked this with me. So maybe you can just tell people what your connection to the world of facilitation and the world of consulting is.
Yeah, sure. Well, just a little bit about my background, why I'm here talking with you. Well, I do work as a self-employed facilitator. I call myself a facilitator and a leadership coach, but I do work at the intersection of facilitation and consultancy and leadership development. And titles-wise, you could call me all those things: consultant, leadership coach, even change management coach, and sometimes facilitation coach, as I teach people also to facilitate. And it really just depends on the hat I'm wearing that day, which title I draw out, really. I did my master's in economics and business administration, so that's where I'm coming from. And you could say I was trained to be a business consultant in my studies. And after finishing my studies, I started working as a management consultant, helping organizations navigate their challenges and drive change in different matters. But then, funny enough, this was back in like 2008, I think, when I first joined my company. My colleagues just had been to a facilitation course. So I was lucky to get their knowledge like on the go, straight into my system. And that shaped really the way I approach consultancy. And through the years, I have been moving away from identifying as a consultant, which I did identify really strongly too in my early days, over to like identifying as a coach and a facilitator. And And that is development just based on my experience, on what works and what doesn't for me and my clients.
Yeah, I have a very similar journey as well. So my last job, actually, I was a consultant. I worked for an international software consultancy, and ironically, I got the job because I told them that I could run workshops, and so I got hired because I could run workshops. And I think that I've always had a very facilitative approach to consultancy, but actually being in the world of consultancy gave me a stronger feeling that what I wanted to do was facilitation. And so it sounds like we've been on a bit of a similar journey, that we've seen what both worlds can look like, and we've both made a choice. So yeah, why don't we start with purpose? Why does somebody hire a consultant, or why does somebody hire a facilitator from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that the need to hire either consultant or facilitator is somewhat the same. There is a challenge. There is some situation that needs attention or needs problem solving, or needs there are decisions, next steps, plans, changes needed in some way. So I think the purpose, I think that's what those two have really in common, that they are different ways to serve the same needs.
Yeah. And that kind of came through, I think, in the LinkedIn research that we did as well.
Yeah.
So lots of people were saying clients just have problems. They don't really necessarily care about what the distinction between these two things are.
No. And I think clients don't, at least a lot of times clients don't really care if I'm a consultant or a facilitator or what title I bring. They just need someone that can help them figure out how to go forward.
Yeah, exactly. This is maybe a natural transition to the topic of mindset anyway. So what in your perspective are the key mindset differences between, let's say a client approaches you and you can approach the same problem as a consultant, or you can approach the same problem as a facilitator? What would you think?
So I was thinking what helpful analogies could be there in the mindset. And I thought of if the problem of the client's problem is all about dancing, then my approach to helping my client could either be coming in as a dance instructor, creating the space, teaching the steps, and then letting the group find the rhythm. So that they get what they need to be able to find their way to the dance. So that would be the facilitative mindset. As if I would come in my consultancy mindset, I would think as myself as the choreographer. I would go and hear their needs, and then I would go and plan a routine, then teach them the routine, and hand over an expertise in doing that routine. So that might be one way of looking at it.
So I think that tallies with a lot of things that we heard from our LinkedIn research as well. So the role and how you see expertise, if I understand your analogy correctly. So I think a lot of people see that a consultant comes and they are expected to be the expert in a particular scenario, and they are expected to bring some expertise that the group does not have.
Yeah.
Versus a facilitator who tries to get the expertise out of the group.
And of course, when I tell it like this, I already am putting like those two on two different extreme axes. So if we were to define them on the extremes.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the things that I'm quite keen on, is like, are these two different things, or is it a spectrum, like a gradient? At some point you end up in in the other camp. So.
Yeah, I think it can't be. I think it really can't be two polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are consultants that are really on the consultant side, on the extreme polar there, and others that are on the extreme polar of facilitation and operate like that. Totally great either way. But in between, there are a lot of gray areas, and there are a lot of ways to use them combined. Using them, letting them, help you serving the needs that are up front at the moment.
One of the wonderful podcasts that I listened to in preparation for recording this with you was one with Miriam Hadness on her Workshops Work podcast, which we'll link down below. And the point in that particular podcast was that there's with consulting, quite often there is a scarcity mindset. So there's a belief that there's scarcity of expertise, and therefore we need to bring some in from the outside. Whereas with facilitation, it's slightly more of an abundance mindset. And we
totally agree with that.
And we can believe that the group is capable of more than we typically give them credit for. And there may be all kinds of reasons why they haven't been successful in the past at unleashing that expertise. But that's our job to find. That's our job to find it. So, yeah.
I really can relate to this, just working with a lot of different companies and managers through my experiences, is that we are, as humans, we are very inclined to, like, we have a problem and we want to get someone in to fix it for us. It's like, that's the easiest way, to have someone come and just, fix it. And then in a way, it's like, this case when there is a problem and we think of, let's just buy an IT system for that. Instead of working with our inner processes and, figuring out how we might do it without a new IT system. Yeah. Can you relate to that?
I can, yes.
So I think it's in some ways similar to that mindset.
Yeah.
Who can we bring in that will give us a quick fix? So I'm talking in extreme mindsets here. So, but I think it's related to this mindset. And also, as you say, as facilitators, we are trained in the mindset of believing in the group, believing in the abilities of the team in the room, and helping the team co-create solutions that they did not know they were able to. And if you haven't trained this mindset, it doesn't come naturally to you. Of course, though, there might be a need for some extra knowledge in the process.
You read my mind. Yeah. That was what I was going to say. What happens when the group doesn't have enough knowledge?
Yeah. So whenever there is a knowledge gap, that a knowledge that you can't find within the company, then of course consultancy is of great help and can really accelerate the success of the team.
Yes, like maybe skill set and tool set is an interesting thing to think about, because I feel like, so my journey was basically that I was exposed to facilitation very young when I worked in the nonprofit sector, and then I learned a lot about the kind of philosophy and a lot of facilitation methods quite early, and then I went into the consultancy world and I got consultant tools, basically. So like frameworks and models and things like that.
And frameworks.
Frameworks and tools and models. And I actually think I
Yeah.
really actually like having both types of tools in my kit now, where I'm like, okay, like that's something that I learned when I was actually working as a consultant, and I had to have a theory behind what this is, but I still apply it, I think, like a facilitator.
Yeah. And I share that with you. I really like having both tools and frameworks and models. I love those. I'm a model nerd, I would say.
Yeah.
And the tools of the facilitator in my pocket when I go working with groups. And what I also like to do is to use, as you say, the frameworks and models as a theoretical background. And I like to use them in my design process, designing questions based on some model, not necessarily introducing the model, right up front in the workshop, but making the model help me design my way through the work with people. And then I might, at the end of the day, help people see, oh, you did what you've done today, what you've accomplished is, we have worked out all the puzzles into this model here, and then just bring the puzzles together and have them see what they have accomplished within uh, uh, a visual model. And that's always like such it's so nice for people to see, oh wow, this is how it all makes sense now.
Yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, we're pro having both sets of skills, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, but I also think of the facilitator's mindset, and how you think about and how you as a person come into the room and act and feel, and how aware of yourself you are. I think that's also a part of the skill set.
That's true, actually.
It's like,
Facilitators do talk a lot more about self-awareness, I think.
Yeah, and I like to think of it like you have the toolbox with you, that's your methods, but also you have to think about how you hold that toolbox.
Yeah.
So that's the two sides of the cone that are equally important in my mind.
So I think we've talked a lot about the kind of ends of the spectrum, like what at the extremes both of these things can look like. So like a facilitator who only ever guides and never ever advises, and the consultant who only ever advises and never really tries to guide. I'm assuming that we're probably on the those are kind of, I haven't seen much of those extremes that much. Would you agree with my assertion? I think good consultancy incorporates a lot of facilitation because it incorporates the active listening, the kind of
I think I really do. I think that in our fast-paced world today, and with all the complex problems we have, you can't be a good consultant without using facilitation as well. And I think you can't be a good facilitator without using any consultancy in certain situations. But a lot of situations require you to also have some specific knowledge to bring along. So I think the mix of mastering both is a really, really good combination for you to have, whether you call yourself a consultant or a facilitator.
I think that's a pretty good note to end on. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounded pretty good.
So this really was the minimum possible conversation, and I wanted to keep it super short. Laura and I actually talked for way longer because this is such a rich topic. So there'll be a part 2 of this conversation where we really get into the details. In part 2, we'll talk about the language we use to describe what we do, such as facilitative consultancy or facilitation first consultancy. We also talk about what we tend to use in a change management context. Spoiler, it's facilitation. And how facilitation can build leadership skills while getting things done. That will be available on this channel soon and possibly linked somewhere here when I work out how YouTube works. If you don't want to miss any episodes, feel free to subscribe to this channel or sign up to the Facilitation Mindset Substack, which will be linked in the description. Further episodes in this series will be Facilitation versus Moderation with Erwan Leborn and Facilitation versus Training with Florentine Versteeg. We will see you back here soon.